Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with part 3 in the final portion of making a bamboo Native American flute with a hacksaw and a pocket knife. So once again, have showed you some of my other techniques and tools, which a lot of you ask for, so I hope that you've all enjoyed it. And that guy that keeps sending the comments about using other tools, just thank you. Anyway, I'm just kidding, there's not a guy like that. But anyway, so what we're going to do today is the hard part for a lot of you, is making the track. It's not that difficult. It really isn't. Just don't be afraid of it. The track and the sound chamber, have been made for thousands of years. It can't be that hard, So we're going to do that, and I'm going to show you every little nuance I possibly can think of to help you get along your way. So if you'll focus in on what we're doing right now, I'll show you, and then we'll get to the decorating and beautiful part of this flute. Okay, so here we are, got our holes, not really super clean or anything. We can do that with some sandpaper in just a minute. Our main goal is to make this guy play. Like I say, if you want to focus a little bit more with your rounding tool, if you do this a little bit longer, you'll actually come out with a really nice rounded smooth hole, the likes of which you cannot achieve with high quality tools. So if you want to keep doing that, that's not a bad idea. You may even decide to get you something round and go in there and just go around circles. So many options, so many different options. Anyway, in the end, we're going to take some sandpaper and clean this off just so that it's out of the way quick and easy. Oh, and here's some leather lace I cut. You can use anything that you've got. The reason that I use leather lace is because it's moderately or semi-flexible. That flexibility is what keeps the block tight on. If you tie a block on with a piece of nylon or even a piece of cotton that's not that flexible, you're going to see that the block is just going to fall off. So that's why I use leather lace. This leather lace I cut myself. I promise I used my pocket knife. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to make our air supply hole back here, and you're going to make it about 1/4 of an inch square. There were old flutes that had square sound and supply holes, and there were old flutes that had round ones. I used to make them all round, but I have determined that the square hole produces a better quality sound. So here we are. Anyway, so you see where we're going here. One thing that a lot of you ask me that is very critical that you understand is the depth of this track is not so important as the lines here, the squareness of these lines. I don't usually draw this on here. Usually this is done and over in about a minute, so when I'm making flutes. But what I'm going to do is show you where we need to make this track and this path. So it is better if the track is slightly wider than the sound hole. Everything does focus on the sound hole, it does. But this air supply hole is very, very important. The track is very, very important. So the track should be at least as wide as your sound hole, if not just a smidgen. What was the smidgen? About a 1/2 millimeter, this one, right? So 1 millimeter or 1/2 millimeter wider is okay. The sound hole, its direct counterpart over here, the air supply hole, they need to be really close to the same. This one needs to have a ledge underneath of it here. This one needs to have a ledge underneath of it here. Nice and square back here, nice and square back here. Lots of ways to do this. Like I say, I just want to make sure that I show you everything that I know and what we have to do this. So check it out. Once again, drilling a hole very gently this time, very gently. You're going to be so upset if you get down here and forget that this is now thinner than the outside wall of the flute, because you've already done all this work and you're trying to make a nice square hole, and unfortunately you just dug through it too deep. So once again, making this very, very gently. You see how quickly it actually tears some of this out? So of course, like I mentioned, we're going to make a tool to do this a little better in just a moment. But something you want to think about is how you're going to get this track in there. Normally, as many of you know, I use a burning tool to do this. Burning tools are great. Let's see what this guy does. That's a little bit better. A little bit better. Let's try something different. So let's take a square chunk out of this guy. I told you these things are really sharp, right? It is incredibly sharp. The edges of this have given me paper cuts my entire life, so lots of different ways to do this. This one may not be the best way, honestly. I think a file works wonders, and I'm not going to do it on the sound hole because, once again, I told you that's the most important part, but I'm going to use this on the back hole in just a moment so you can see what it looks like, so it's only for demonstration purposes. I'm going to be using the my tool I'm making here, as well as my knife, to create the sound hole. Okay. Just kind of make a nice little square tool is all I'm shooting for here. And once again, since it's already sharp, let's see what we can do. Just kind of, I think it's a little bit too wide. As a kid, I didn't have to use pieces of cut sticks to make flute blocks with. I had a few tools, but pocket knife was really about, I just chipped up a piece. Be careful of that. Okay. Let's see. Getting squarer. I'm going to clean this bottom part of the hole, and then I'm going to drop a little bit of super glue because I chipped up this little piece here. It's kind of square. I'm going to take this little bit out with my knife. And just kind of clean it up just a little bit. You know, a hobby and craft knife would do a great job with this. Just kind of gently. Right there. You can see this piece that I chipped up, which I'm about to super glue down. This hole is a lot better off if it's more square. Many of you that subscribe to our channel, I know, are the type that have those $600 and $700 really expensive giant low-tone flutes. Some of my buddies are giggling in the background there, I'm sure. But those giant low-tone flutes, there's a few makers that really put those out. I do make, you know, some low-tone flutes, but it's not my favorite. They kind of drift away from tradition. Not the makers, but the flutes themselves. But those giant low-tone flutes usually have not a square, but rather a rectangular hole that's wider than it is long. And I have found historical references of Native American flutes that were more, the track area here was more long than wide. So there's so many different ways. And then there's one or two, I'm sure, professional flute makers that subscribe to my channel just to see if I ever throw out anything handy to them. And they're thinking to themselves, wow, a wide track? That's just crazy. Because typically, I mean, a long track, wide track, yes, that's about common with most flute makers except for a small handful of us, but making the track longer this way, that's just nuts. Well, there's an old Ojibwe flute that I've got some pictures of in my archives that has a long sound hole rather than a wide sound hole. Most of them are either square or round though. At least in my experience. Let me put it that way. So once again, this kind of thing would be easier if you had a small file. Even a cardboard fingernail file, would you believe that? Would do a great job right here. But you seen what I did. And right now, I'm not actually... ooh, hey, that looks even better. Keeps me from having to glue it back in. I'm not trying to sand it. I'm trying to buff the track area with this little tool. So, like I say, it just takes a little bit of practice. How about that? I don't even have to use super glue. It chipped off far enough that I made a little bit more perfectly square hole. Hopefully my big head isn't in the way here. Okay, so, as promised, this is not part of the actual demonstration. For those of you who are concerned with me using tools other than, let's see, gotta make the hole just a little bit bigger. This hole we're working on now is the air supply hole. It's called such because it's where the air comes out of this flute chamber back here. and supplies the track, which then feeds the sound hole. So here we go. Just kind of going in gently, filing. Real easy stuff. Turn it around, hold it, file it. I don't know if it's so much that this is a better tool to use than the homemade one I just cut out for the other side. It's just the tool that I'm more accustomed to using. Although, once again, these days when I make a track on a flute, I use my burning tools. I do come back with this, which is why it's so boogered up and ugly, but this is one of my favorite files. I come back with this usually and clean the track area out, and I use a chisel now. I used to use an X-Acto blade that was made to fit, but these days I use a chisel because I don't have to replace it. But anyway, just kind of filing, making it nice and square. I can see people at home in my mind rooting for me. Go ahead and put it in this other end, and that other guy say, you better not put it in the other end. Just a little joke. Okay, so not too shabby. You can come under here like this and file at an angle, and that'll give you that ledge that I was shooting for over here on this one. You know, and if you wanted to, if this file is small enough, even a cardboard one, once again, it's small enough, you could gently go back and forth here and make your track area. But for those of you who don't have a file on hand or way to get one, I'm going to use my knife to just push down in there, making an indentation on top of that pencil drawing that I did for you a few moments ago. Push it down just a little bit. This is very similar to what we did with the hacksaw up here. And I'm just going to kind of, not necessarily pry it out, but now that we've created that line, we're using the knife to, as with a coloring book, color between the lines. So that's what I'm doing, is just kind of gently scraping it out. This knife is not that sharp, by the way. They always say that a dull knife will kill you or cut you or whatever before a sharp one will. I found that sharp knives usually cut a lot faster than dull ones do, but my knives are usually dull, or rather my knife. This is the only one I keep in my pocket or on my person all the time. But my knives are usually dull from use. I sharpen them and use them and sharpen them and use. So there's one part there that I really want to get. It's this corner. There we go. This is called Gentle Force. You must learn the way of the flute. And learn the gentle force. One day I'm going to be doing something like this on a video, and those couple of you that I know personally who fall asleep watching my videos, I'm going to stab myself and scream really loud, and you're going to be like, ah, I woke up. I'm awake. Anyway, just a little bit of scraping there. If you see that it's not going the way you want it, try it from a different angle. That's exactly what I do. Okay, so in just a second what we're going to do is we're going to use our scraper tool that we built for the inside of this area, and we're going to kind of smooth it off. A lot of you are looking at this probably thinking, yeah, the track is really shallow. It's not really that shallow. And if it was deeper, it would probably play a little bit better than what it's going to. Although it's going to play good. At least I hope it plays good. Didn't made a million flutes for nothing. Let's see. Okay. So just scraping along here. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the depth of each area, all of these pits inside of the track from having used a pocket knife to create it, and making sure that I've covered them all thoroughly. Now to use our little scraper tool. All we're really achieving with this thing is just buffing down fibers. We're not really scraping a whole lot of anything at this point. And of course the file would be a great tool at this point. But this video is for that one guy that's going to say, I thought this video was going to be using just a pocket knife and hacksaw. I'm just kidding. I'm making out like there's just one guy saying that. A little joke, y'all. I hope you enjoy our videos. There's a little bit of comedy inside of them, as well as a whole lot of, what's that word again? Prattle. Yeah. I like prattle. Prattle's good stuff. It's a sign of a true entertainer. I'm not just a crafts person here, or a historian. Okay, so that doesn't look too shabby. I hope that you can see it well. I'm going to turn it towards the light here while I choose my block mechanism. Let's see, I think I'm going to start from a new one. Let's see here. So, what I'm going to do is use this piece, and let's see what it's going to look like. I'm going to draw me a line right here so I know where the bottom of it's going to be. And the block needs to cover from this area. This is our sound hole. Fingerings are down here on the right. We're on your left. The sound hole, this is the air supply hole. It needs to fully cover the air supply hole and not cover the sound hole. So we're going to draw a line so that it shows where we're going to cut from right here. And then the other line needs to be back here. Okay? So we're going to cut a piece of bamboo out to do that. And you can stay focused on it right here while I do so. I'm just going to scar this dude. Been lots of events that we've attended that I have had to use just a pocket knife to make things like this. So we've got it scored. 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 Hey, how about that? Cut all the way through it. That's pretty nice. Using the hacksaw backwards. As a kid, I don't know if you guys ever did, but I used to always take these blades out and turn them around the other way. It's one of those silly things that kids do, I guess. Okay, so we have a nice flat edge here, nice flat edge here. And we're going to clean this little booger off so I can hold it straight and you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to, as with a chisel, use my knife, very gently bump it and do like that. Of course, if you bump it too hard, you stab yourself on the sharp piece, but just wanted to do that a little bit. And let's see, make it a little flatter here, not quite as flat as I wanted. Pocket knife flat anyway. I could use a piece of sandpaper on it. Not too shabby. You can always flatten this off with your pocket knife, or if you want to go to the next step, a piece of sandpaper. Back and forth. Hold that sandpaper nice and flat, go back and forth like this. It's just an alternate technique. Another way you can do it if you don't have a belt sander or any crazy tools to make this stuff with. It needs to be nice and flat. There we go, it's not too bad. Set it up here and see what it looks like. It sits back a little ways actually, which is not a problem. Okay. It's actually better if the block sits back just a little bit, although that might be a little much. I like it usually close to the edge, but it's better that it sits back a little bit away from the sound hole than if it were covering over part of the sound hole, for lots of reasons. And because we're in a testing stage, not the finishing stage, I'm going to go ahead and clamp this guy down with a squeezy clamp, because you hate to have to tie something and then untie it. It's not sitting on there real flat either. Let's see what is causing that. A little sandpaper back and forth. Not too bad. Let's see if we can see it in here. It's the block. The block needs to be just a little bit flatter. Once again, using varying amounts of pressure. If you push down too hard on each end, you're going to wallow out the end more. If you push down too hard in the middle, you're going to wallow out the middle more, right? Little joke. Anyway, So let's clamp this down. So many of you are patiently waiting to see what it sounds like. Let's see if it makes a sound. Doesn't sound exactly right, but it is making a noise. Go ahead and sand these areas off a little bit. Don't want to sand it too much because it's going to mess up my pretty patina that I've got there. This is a small part of the tuning process, but lots of ways you can do this. Again, I prefer burning tools, which is the way I'm going to finish this flute in just a moment. But that's a personal preference, and as you see, it doesn't take burning tools to make it play. It's just the way I like to make them play well. Not too bad. Let's see if that made a difference in sound. Sounds like it's got something going on in here. Just had some bamboo paper stuck inside of it. Let's see if that made any difference. So the bottom note sounds kind of sounds a little bit sharp, but that's because our holes are real tiny. If we make the holes larger, it's going to sound like they're more flat. So I don't mind doing that with a piece of sandpaper here for just a moment and showing you. Or let's try the pocket knife, but very gently. Focus with a pocket knife on the sides if you have to do this method. We'll do the sandpaper in just a minute too, so you can see what that looks like. Just focus on the sides with the blade, not up and down. Up and down will take care of itself. So pocket knife, side to side. We're just using it to scrape a little bit here and there. And then we can go back to our tool that we made. And if this end here is a little bit too dull for you, this is the way people used to do it. Just get you a sharper end. And now, go back to the hole we started enlarging. And we're going to use this reamer to ream it out a little bit bigger after having used my pocket knife just a little bit. Once again, the reamer itself can also crack the flute just like the pocket knife can, so you want to be mindful of that and be careful. Hole's a little bit bigger, not as much as I really need it to be, but the hole is going to be a lot bigger here in just a second. Let's see what we can do. There we go. So now we have something sharp, sandpapery, and hard in the middle of this thing. You just got the best of all worlds there now. And that seems to work pretty well. Makes a nice round hole. As we discussed too, if we wanted to go back later and use just a piece of wood or a piece of bamboo or whatever to ream the hole again, it'll make that hole really nice and perfectly round, which is good. Nice and round. So we need to do that to each of them, which is what I'm going to do right now. Might have to speed this part up to help it out a little bit. Okay, so we have some slightly larger holes. I don't know if they're going to make the tonal change that we're really looking for here, so we may have to resort to some other tools, but I wanted to show you some other methods anyway. So let's play it and see what it sounds like and see where we need to go from here. So still not, the notes here are not high enough to match the tone of the bottom of the flute. I can hear it at this point. I just hear it, you know. I mean, I'm not saying I have perfect intonation with my hearing. I hear what I like to hear, like anybody, I guess. And I can hear that it's not playing a minor pentatonic scale that I want it to play. Now, if I wanted to, if it were like many of my customers that wanted something that was tuned perfectly, I can break my little tuner out that I've got now to replace my cell phone app. This tuner cost me about 12 bucks. There's a lot of them on eBay and online for about $12. And then, of course, your local music stores may have some ranging anywhere from between 11 to 30 or so. $30 is a really expensive tuner. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do everything you need it to do. I like this as a real simple little CA1 chromatic Korg. You can tune it up and down. If you notice, there's a little set of numbers here that I'm changing. There's 432 hertz. If I wanted to tune a flute to 432, and I can tune it up to 440, and it'll even go up to 458. If any of you like to listen to Beatles music and like John Lennon, oops. Here's 458 hertz tuning, but anywho, I just leave it on 440 most of the time. You can use this and check the notes and the tones and compare them against the minor pentatonic scales that I have on my website if you need to, but honestly, that's not the way to do it. I don't like tuning flutes that way unless it's really called for. This is a copy of a traditional Cherokee Indian flute that never seen a tuner before, and that's the way we're going to go. So what I'm going to show you is a couple of my favorite tools. Let's see, I'm looking over here for them. Just trying to pick out which ones I want to use. There's a drill bit I like. Now, if you started these holes with a pocket knife, do not use an electric drill to go the rest of the way unless you know what you're doing, or if you're careful, or if you're prepared for some disappointment, because an electric drill may go in here and split them at this point, whereas I can do it by hand with a drill bit and not split them. I hope not split them anyway. This is my real common 3/16 drill bit that I like to use, and all I did was make the hole just a little bit bigger. Most of my flute holes are between 1/4 and 5/16, and some of them are 3/8 if it's a low tone flute. This is the one I usually start them with. This is another tool. This looks kind of like a little spear. I mean, it looks like a Native American spear point put on the end of a, made out of metal, put on the end of a metal rod. And what it is, it's a glass drill bit, and I use these glass drill bits for just about everything. It's incredibly sharp. It's just a piece of carbide on the end of it. I have to be careful though. I'm using less pressure with this than I was with the other one. Glass drill bits are great. If you put this inside of a drill press or inside of a drill and you hadn't had experience with this before, it's going to make this hole a triangular shape. And if it doesn't make it a triangular shape, it's going to split your piece of bamboo, river cane, or other hardwood that you're using. Because it's a paddle, it's kind of flat-sided, but it works great for me for what I'm using it for now. We use them for a few other things too, but like I say, they will definitely make a triangular shaped hole if you're not careful. It's incredibly sharp. Basically like a little tiny sharp knife, or like a stone knife. But once again, just using it like this, making the hole a little bit bigger. Could still do that with my pocket knife, but I wanted to show you these alternate tools. Making the hole a little bit bigger. And those of you with really good hearing, who can hear past any neighborhood dogs, or my mailman that just came a few minutes ago, or anything, you may hear some tissue tearing inside of this as I'm turning this drill bit. That's not so bad as it is if you were tearing that tissue with a pocket knife. It's all about force. And let's see here, go back, making these holes a little bit bigger to speed things up, and for the sake of the video, I've considered using other tools, but I wanted to just show you the ways that you can do this without any hand tools, any major electric or power tools, which I guess is what we should have titled it, but it'll be okay. Not too shabby. Holes are a little bit bigger yet. Let's see if that changed it enough. Now, no, that's not what my flute sounds like. But we're going to need to make the holes a little bit bigger even yet. So if you guys will forgive me for fast forwarding here. Okay, so now my holes are a little bit bigger even yet. It's starting to look more like it should. And what I'm going to do to perfectly tune this guy in just a second is make them even larger yet. I'm going to use some power tools so I don't have to stand here all day doing this when I have a way to do it. You can see what's going on. I'll show you a little trick too that you can do. I'm going to cover the bottom of the hole with the bottom of this table. And you could put a plug inside of it, not to completely close it off, but to partially close it off. Like if you had a smaller piece of bamboo and this bottom note sounded like it's too high and the fingerings were okay, you could put a small plug of bamboo in there with a hole in it, which will reduce or constrict the size of the flute, and that causes back pressure. Back pressure changes the tone, just like having a longer piece of flute. And it's definitely not the tone I was shooting for anyway, because the original one was a lot bigger holes than this. So I'm going to do that real quick, and you guys will get to see what it looks and plays like perfectly here. And then from there, we'll go to the next stage. Okay, coming out of high speed there and silent film version for a second, but I'm going to do something right here for a really quick little demonstration, which is what all of this is for anyway. I'm going to go ahead and make a block with my belt sander. So if you were doing this 1,000 years ago, you could still produce a beautiful sounding flute without tools. However, you would have a varying number of different size little hand tools like this guy that you could use to, my little glass bit here, you could ream it out. You'd also have lots of time on your hands to do this kind of thing. It would take you probably a couple, 2 or 3 days maybe to create a beautiful sounding and looking flute. And let's see. Another reason I wanted to show you kind of a comparison contrast here between these other tools creating the sounds is this is kind of a journey. It's a path that you get on, you know? It's not an end of the road that you're going to find as soon as you notice that you're actually on a road. You're not going to be at the end of the journey from the moment that you get started. I hate to keep bringing up those low-tone flutes, but that's a Same way I feel about those. I have so many people saying, I'd like to buy a really low-tone flute. Of course, we do offer them, like I say, on our website. But they say, I want to buy a really low-tone flute because it sounds very mellow, and high-tone flutes don't sound mellow. Well, that's not exactly accurate. How mellow something sounds is reliant on the flute player. I've played some really fantastically high sounding flutes that sound amazing. You know, I've seen people bring tears to their eyes. Beautiful flutes. But there's an idea there that this is going to help you get to the end of the path quicker. And that is definitely not what this video is about going from point A to point B. This is the road in between. We're going to stay on that road until we can't travel it anymore. It will never be done. So basically the holes are a little larger now than my 3/16 bit. They're actually a little bigger than a quarter. It looks like they're about between a quarter and 5/16, not quite 5/16. Get back up there. Good sounding flute. As promised, I was going to show you some of the rest of this you can do by hand with your sandpaper and what have you. Yep. This right here works great. I like to do it on the flatbed here. But if you just take your sandpaper in hand, fold it into a nice little square, round in circles, get to the point if it feels like there's some sharp edges, do like this. Just knock those sharp edges right off. Just like that. Nothing to it. You can do the same thing on the bottom. Around, around, around. I'll do it on my belt sander here in just a moment. It's just quicker. Or you can do it the way I used to do it too, which is kind of put it on something flat and go around in circles. This is a reasonably quick method. It's just the way that I do it these days is so much quicker. Once again, taking my piece of leather cord, so draped over the edge, long on one side, short on the other. I'm holding it with my finger and holding the block with my thumb. Watch. Round, round. Keeping it flat the whole time. We have a video on this for those of you wondering why I'm taking the time out to show you how to tie. It is kind of important. Makes it nice and neat looking. And nice and neat looking, although, you know, it may seem just cosmetic, making this nice and neat looking actually makes it perform better. You have more of a flat surface holding the block down. So now you have a nice little flute made by hand, made with a pocket knife and a hacksaw, finished with other tools, but once again I wanted to show you that you can make it, especially if you take your time with just the simplest of tools, and it sounds good. I'll take it one more little step here. Get out my handy dandy bottle of sunflower oil. I'm going to put this down inside of here so that you can see the progress from one state to the next. Just like I promised with the flute, we did make it all with a pocket knife, but then I took it the next step so that you could see what it sounds like and what happens when you use a burning tool. I like the burning tools a lot myself. It's the way I've been doing it for a good while now, 12 years or something, maybe a little longer. I see some bamboo paper up in there I should have gotten out. That's okay. Any of you that don't know, bamboo paper is just like a fiber that grows inside of the plant that keeps it moist and helps to control the environment inside of the plant, which is the reason it's such a prolific grower. It's got its own ecosystem in there. It sounds better. How about if we get a little bit of oil in the track area? Let's see, it's not dripping in there yet. There we go. Now it's going to sound bubbly. Listen. Sounds kind of funny. Put your finger over this area, blow really fast. So a great little flute. It may have taken a couple of video clips to make it happen. It may have taken a little bit of work to get it to play right. I've shown you every technique that you could do by hand and showed you how they can, you know, change and evolve into new techniques. Birding techniques, once again, my favorite. And I've also showed you something very crucial that I hope you've all made a note of, is that the track area, I made it too shallow the first time. If you're using a pocket knife or sandpaper or something like that, 9 times out of 10 you're making it too shallow, and you need to go and keep at it and make sure that it's nice and flat across inside of the track area, and so that it tapers maybe down this way a little bit, if any direction, but not that way. Also, the block wasn't as flat as I liked it. I could have achieved it with the sandpaper back and forth, or with a file, or any number of other things, but I use my belt sander. That's what I'm accustomed to and what I use every day, you know, thousands and thousands of flutes. Oh. but anyway, so you see what it takes and what happens when you change just one little thing. Now that we have the track area a little deeper, you can see, you know, that it sounds a lot better. So that's it. Once again, Charlie Mato-Toyela signing out for BlueBearFlutes.com and Blue Bear Arts on Facebook. You can find any of our contact information there and send us a message if you have some questions. Please feel free to leave us some really nice, happy, good, positive, excellent comments. And if you feel inclined to do so, and even if you don't, go ahead and subscribe to us. So anyway, take care, happy flute making. I'll just play this on the way out.